Does Bill Moos's book make Matt Rhule look good?
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen of the day, and thanks for doing it every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda puts the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work that defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward coming up. There's more to Mazda because there's more to you.
Welcome in. It is Friday. This is the mailbag episode, Locked On Nebraska podcast. I am Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. We have made it to the end of the week. This is the last week in February without football. Nebraska will return to the football field in a practice kind of way next Saturday. So we'll have that to talk about next week. Basketball gets back in gear. Huskers host Northwestern on Saturday and then go to Iowa next Tuesday. So lots of fun coming up here. How was your week been, Connor?
So far, so good. And by the way, Northwestern, who did not beat Michigan, but nearly did.
We almost predicted it.
Yeah. And but the other one did happen. There goes my camera. The other one did happen. Iowa did lose to Maryland, which is kind of wild.
Yes. We were recording the show during the Iowa-Maryland game on Wednesday night, and we semi-predicted an Iowa victory, but we acknowledged that the game was going on, and then we joked about the possibility that Northwestern coming to Lincoln might beat Michigan in Evanston later in the evening on Wednesday. And when I pulled up the score on my phone and saw that Northwestern was up by like 15 points in the second half, I'm like, well, that's clearly a mistake. Then ESPN screwed up the app. There's no possible way, and flipped on the game. And yes, but Michigan came back to win by double digits. So Northwestern is 10-15 coming to Lincoln. All right, we got lots of questions to get to on the mailbag. So let's get right into it from Jordan. As you mentioned in the open, Jordan wants to know. Here's his question: how much does the new Bill Moos book, which exposes a lot of ineptitude with the athletic department, help Matt Rhule's, quote, "this is what I inherited" case? Does it make his results, though ugly lately, look a little bit better?
I don't know that. I guess I'll speak from my own perspective. I never doubted Rhule that he didn't inherit a good picture, whether he's talking about from the powers that be and the meddling that we've talked about on this podcast several times, like. And then also as far as this roster was concerned, like I don't doubt that is the truth. What bothers me the most about it is that he has waited until now to start to talk about it. So I guess I don't look at it through that prism. I think the thing that has come out of the Moos book is like bringing all that stuff to the surface a little bit. And I know like people had heard that a lot over the years. They're like, yeah, it's just, it doesn't, it's not real linear. People don't see eye to eye from top down. Like these are very clear examples of it from Moos's point of view. And you are inclined to believe him because you've heard a lot about it over the years. As far as like, does it make Rhule's case for that look better? Like, I don't like, he always had a case for it. He's just talking about it more now.
I mean, Bill Moos had been gone for a year and a half when Matt Rhule took over. So maybe some of the mess had been cleaned up, or maybe it hadn't. I think Trev Alberts got things.
Trev inherited the same mess.
Trev inherited a mess. Trev inherited more of a mess than Matt Rhule did. Let's just say that. Yeah. And I think
part of the reason why Trev isn't here anymore is because of that mess. It's
because of some of the continuation of the types of things that Bill Moos wrote about in his book. And now that's water under the bridge because Trev Alberts has been gone for 2 years. And I think there's some things that Trev was maybe unable to do because of the way the leadership worked at Nebraska that for whatever reason, Troy Dannon has in fact been able to do and accomplish. He's
gotten some, I think Rhule has been an instrumental, figure in, or at least was early in being being that kind of person and a voice for sort of everybody to say, hey, all right, we need everybody to move in the same direction. So I think he has been good at that piece of it. Obviously, none of it matters if you don't win football games, but I think he's helped some of that.
I actually wrote about this. It's out Friday today on The Athletic, and kind of reviewing what's happened this week and some of the newsy items in Nebraska football. And of course, I spent much of the piece writing about this Bill Moos stuff and what it looks like, or what it says about Matt Rhule. And I found it interesting that Matt Rhule is in the exact moment in his tenure, like the equivalent to where Scott Frost was at when Frost wanted desperately to cancel the Oklahoma game. It was the spring after his third season, and then a couple months later, his AD got sent packing. I know he retired. He got $3 million to go retire, quote retire. So what I wrote about is that I do think this actually bodes well for Rhule, because what we see when you peel back these layers that Bill Moos has somewhat done with his book is how bad it was and how dysfunctional it was. Like, that's one thing you can't really argue whether Moos has embellished some of this or not, is that it was very dysfunctional. And
yeah,
I think it's inarguable that it's less dysfunctional now. So there's more hope. Like, it gives some kind of reason to why it didn't work out for Scott Frost. And, some of that was Frost's own dysfunctional nature, but a lot of that is gone. I get it. There's still political forces involved, but whatever. It's not as dysfunctional as it was.
I don't think so
in 2021.
Well,
and that should bode well for Matt Rhule.
And the key part, I think, like Rhule, unlike his predecessor and unlike his predecessor's boss. Well, I shouldn't say that about Moos. We know this about Frost, though. He's not going to run from it. Like, like he's not going to try and get the Ohio State game canceled next year. Like,
well, he did cancel the Tennessee game.
That's true. I guess he had a little space to hide behind there, given that it was sort of a trend around college football. But
that was apples and oranges. I mean, the canceling the Oklahoma game in 2021, when it was the 50th year anniversary of the game of the century, and the game was like 6 months away from when they wanted to cancel it, is different from what Nebraska did with the Tennessee game in Knoxville. But they still did duck out of the Tennessee game. So
that's fair.
Yeah. All right.
Here's Emmett in Ainsley, Nebraska, out of Old Custer County. One of my favorite counties of the 99. All right. I don't know. I've got a few way too early hot takes and predictions for this upcoming football season that I'd love for you guys to discuss on the show. A few means 9 from Emmett. All right. So here they are. I will read all of them before we let each other react. Jamal Rhule finishes the season as RB1. We have a 1,000-yard receiver this year. Danny Odom ends up starting. Anthony Calandria puts up 4,500 all-purpose yards. We go 9-3 and upset one of these 4: Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, Washington. We have back-to-back 1,000-yard rushers. Owen Chambliss leads the team in tackles and tackles for loss. Nebraska finishes inside the top 10 for the 2027 recruiting class, and Luke Sorensen plays a massive role as a freshman. Which ones are the most realistic, which are ridiculous, or which might actually happen?
Thank you, Emmett. We should have just done this as a whole show. We could have knocked out an entire episode with Emmett's question like next Tuesday, but we stuck it into a mailbag and we got to move on quickly from this. A lot of this is pie in the sky stuff. Like, I don't think that much of some of it's going to happen. Some of it's more likely than others. Nebraska could, I don't even know if it would be an upset. We'll see when Halloween comes around, but grouping Washington with Oregon, Indiana, and Ohio State, I think is a bit interesting. Yeah, Nebraska could beat Washington. If you're going to say they're going to upset one of those 3 college football playoff teams from 2025, I'm not ready to go there yet. I can see Danny Odom end up starting, so that's semi-realistic. Otherwise, top 10 in the 2027 recruiting class, I don't think they'll be in the top 10. No,
that feels. I mean, 20,
top 20.
That feels not crazy. I'll put that in the not crazy category. I would say I think they could have a 1,000-yard receiver. That feels almost like that might be my most likely.
Hunter Gilmer.
It would probably be Hunter. Yes, it'd probably be Isaiah Hunter.
I can see him doing that. Yeah.
A
lot of yak.
I don't necessarily see 1,000-yard rusher that
no.
doesn't feel that crazy, but I don't necessarily see it. I don't see Jamal Rhule finishing as the number one running back.
I think that's overcompensating for your concerns about who the running backs are that they have coming.
Right. Yeah. And I think Luke Sorensen could play a role. I don't know about a massive role.
Yeah. I mean, Nebraska hasn't had any tight end play a massive role in quite a while. Austin Allen maybe would be the last one. And Owen Chambliss, I could see him leading the team in tackles. Sure. Why not with TFLs? I would expect that the TFL leader is going to be a lineman, but it could be a linebacker. So, okay.
These are good.
Moving on. Thank you, Emmett. From Greg in Broken Arrow. Hi, fellas. How big a difference in evaluating talent is there between a high schooler versus a player out of the portal? Coach Rhule had success developing high school players. Although player development continues with portal players, they are not starting from scratch. Is this a mountain or a hill to climb?
I mean, in hearing them talk about it, like obviously there's evaluation and you have to see what they do well and how they would fit in what you're doing. But like, the whole draw of the portal is you're getting, if you're transferring from a similar level, is that you're getting a plug and play player, which means they don't have to sit there and wait for a couple of years. So there's less development and there's less, I would imagine, less evaluation. You could look at a guy's stats and be like, yeah, he's done this for two years already. So why wouldn't he do it in a third year? And
they're older, and they're older and they're in college. They've already gone through the transition to college, which can be something that deters players from developing, just like the life change that they have to go through. Some players handle that well, some handle it poorly. I mean, I would say it's akin to like in the NFL trying to evaluate somebody in the draft that you're drafting out of college versus a player that you're making a trade for, picking up as a free agent. And it's much easier to evaluate somebody who's already competed at that level. So that's Greg also pointed out to us before we take a break that he was 32 years old in 1978 when Tom Osborne was on the hot seat or getting interest from Colorado. We talked about that in the mailbag last week. I had a question about Coach Osborne almost leaving for Colorado, and Greg was agreeing with the sentiment that T.O. was kind of in trouble then, and laid out the stuff about how we know what he inherited from Bob Devaney and how he couldn't beat Oklahoma for a while. So thank you, Greg, for all your contributions. As always, we will take a break.
Let me tell Greg first. I am 34 years old right now. I'm 33 years old right now. So he's as old as I was. All right. He said he was in 1978. This is 2026. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I just don't know if there's really any point for you to mention that you're
I sometimes forget how old I am.
Yeah. Let's take a break. We'll come back with more questions after this.
But first, a word from Indeed. Hiring, Indeed. We have a word from Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who could actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the way to go. Because instead of hoping that the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing for people who actually fit your criteria, life skills, certifications, and location. That is what is good about Indeed. You can get specific and target exactly what you need. You don't have to sift through all of the nonsense to get there. And with Indeed sponsored jobs, your post gets seen by candidates who are actually a fit. So you weed out some bad ones right away to start. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that we've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. And a word from the FanDuel Sportsbook. Let's go back to back. The winter games are here, as you can see. And if you're anything like us, we're winter games fanatics here at the Locked On Nebraska podcast. You're locking in for events that you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. That's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts, individual events, finding your angle on sports you care about most, or finding a new sport entirely. It is all up to you. The niche events actually are what make the Olympics cool. For me, you get to watch something that's only on TV once every 4 years. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. Head to FanDuel right now and play your game. All right, we're back. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen of the day, and thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Let's get into rapid fire mode. We got to get to all your questions. Yep. Here's William in Southwick, Massachusetts, and Thompson, Connecticut. 2 houses. How about that? Pretty good.
That's a good situation. That's a little bit. He's a little bit bragging there, but good for you, William.
Congratulations on your Patriots in their AFC title, and
New Englander. He's a New Englander through and through.
Yeah, I'm sure he's a Patriots fan and a Sox fan. Enjoy. Drake May's probably never going to get back to another Super Bowl. He says this: I sent an email earlier on whether a do or die upcoming season for Rhule, especially whether it's a do or die season for Rhule, especially if the fan base starts to empty the stands, like what happened to Solich and others. Tough for an AD to keep a coach who's losing economic revenue for the university and community. Listen, last week to you talk about whether the fans have lost the Rhule Kool-Aid talk, and definitely it's a yes. I just came back with my son for the Illinois basketball game. Ugh. And a lot of the apathy toward the football program. There is a lot of apathy toward the football program, and this came from my Husker friends back home. Common is not throwing in the towel on football, but the towel is in my hand. So here's my question. Rhule spoke to the program having all the money it needs to build a competitive roster. Nebraska signed 1 top 100 transfer portal players, a mid-tier quarterback, and shortcomings with the offensive line, no running back, etc. Is Rhule just that good at utilizing money, or does he not have clout to bring in the best? We'll find out. See if seats next year are empty by halftime.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a glass half empty way to look at Nebraska's work in the transfer portal. I wouldn't look at the 16 that Nebraska got and say that there were shortcomings throughout. I mean, I definitely have questions about the decision not to sign a running back, and we've talked plenty about that. And I don't know that the defensive line, they didn't get all their first picks. We'll put it that way. It's very much jury still out on what Nebraska got. I like what they did on the offensive line. I don't know that I necessarily see Calandria as mid-tier. I saw a ranking this week. I think it was PFF, which you take with a grain of salt, that had him as the number 2 or 3 quarterback that transferred in this cycle. So, to answer your question, William, Rhule, I think he's pretty good with like Nebraska's money management on the portal stuff. Like, they got 10 starters out of the portal last season. I realized it was for ultimately a 7-6 team, but it's not the first thing that I'm going to look at and say Matt Rhule's got to get a lot better at that when it comes to spending money that they have at their disposal in the portal.
I think this year's quote unquote money went to, a lot of retention on your own roster. And so that's an important thing to note here. It's not like you just get the pile and those are all for transfers. I mean, you have to pay your team, what you have the ability to do. We have both been vocal about them not going after a running back and how we think that's the wrong direction. And time will tell. So I think there was some shortcomings in some places, but ultimately, like as a whole, I think they did fine. Like I think they did fine in the transfer portal, and I definitely don't think it was like because they cheaped out or because they don't have the money or anything like that. I just think they went after what they felt like they needed, and they got they got their first choice in some areas, they got their second choice in some areas, and their third choice in some areas, and that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
You are absolutely right, though. And I mean, it's such a great point to bring up when you say that it's tough for an AD to keep a coach who's losing economic revenue for the university and the community. And Nebraska football is never going to lose money, but if it's not making as much money as it could make, then you got all kinds of problems to deal with. So they're not at that point right now, but it can happen, and it has happened in the past in situations that didn't look all that much different from where Nebraska's at right now after 3 years with Matt Rhule. So we'll see. Let's go to Jim. A couple of them that we can just knock out real quick here. Jim in Winchester, Virginia. He says, which one of these kind of forgotten or injured players do you think will be able to make a big impact for the Big Red on Saturdays? Bonner, Bell, or Nelson? Pick a player no one is thinking or talking about right now that will just and we went through this a bit on the pod yesterday.
Out of the three, it's probably Bonner. He's like the most proven out of all of them. Like Nelson probably has the most upside, I guess, but I don't.
Yes,
actually, I don't know. Maybe Bell does. I'm not. I'd take Bonner out of those three.
The one out of these three that I think will make an impact next season, I agree with you. It's Bonner. I would like to see it be Carter Nelson. I'm waiting. I would love to see that happen because I think he's a real exciting player if he can get there. From Noel in Clarksville, Tennessee. Good morning, gentlemen. Quick question. What are the differences between official and unofficial visits for recruits? Do they pay their own way on unofficials? Do they get treated differently on an official? This isn't keeping me up at night, but I'm just curious. Thanks. Keep up the excellent work.
Perfect question for a mailbag question. As far as I've understood it, if it's the official visit is an all expenses paid situation. Yeah. And they can, the weekend is theirs. The unofficial is there's some things that they could provide. And
game tickets.
Yeah. I don't know exactly what the limits are on it, but yeah, the official visit is the big one. And you only get one of those per school. So you gotta do it the right way, and they certainly lay out all the stops for them. That's for sure. I'm sure
if they asked a judge in Mississippi, they could probably take 14 official visits to to one school if they wanted. But the unofficial visit, you're not supposed to really get anything other than game tickets and including food. Now, I think that there are some ways around that, like they can eat at the stadium maybe, but by the letter of the law, they're not supposed to get food, or certainly not transportation or lodging on an unofficial visit. So that's how it works. But hey, look, they get NIL now, so
right,
your NIL for the week will be, I don't know. Like the rules are all a mess at this point.
Payback on the back end. Here's Chris in Iowa City. Full disclosure, I stumbled upon your podcast with the help of a YouTube algorithm. Nice. That means we're putting the right stuff in there. I thought an interesting topic on college sports would be Iowa State's AD, Jamie Pollard, coming out and saying that Iowa State's athletic department is running in a deficit and is on an unsustainable course. This seems odd given that Iowa State has been successful football, men's basketball, and women's basketball, but they were unable to even try to outbid Penn State for Matt Campbell, and they've lost many football players. They have limited resources to buy players this year. Iowa and Nebraska ? We'll get a conference share, which is 2 times what Iowa State gets. Yeah, it's gonna be more than that too, and that disparity will continue every year. The portal and coach salaries only make the situation worse. And then he goes on to talk more about Pollard. Pollard's complaint is that some schools get athletic department funding from their state. Iowa's constitution does not allow for such funding. The athletic departments at Iowa, Iowa State, and UNI are self-funded. What makes it interesting is for an out-of-state prospect to like your show, like your show is that big picture. It seems the Big Ten and the SEC are squeezing the ACC and the Big 12 out of the sports business. So while Iowa, Nebraska might not care what happens to Iowa State, their situation might signal a change in college sports in the next 5 to 10 years. Maybe there will be 2 24-team conferences like the AFC or the NFC, or a system like Premier League in soccer where the bottom teams get relegated. I think Iowa and Nebraska have a lot of respect for what Iowa State has been able to do, but their future is bleak.
Yeah, thank you for all of that. And thank you for listening to the show, Chris. Much appreciated. Connor, you drew the short straw in reading the longest question in the history of the Locked On Nebraska podcast, but you had a lot of good points. You had a lot of good points in there, Chris. And yes, I do think that college sports is headed toward, it's barreling uncontrollably towards something that makes Iowa State not even a contender for the same championships that schools from the Big Ten and the SEC are competing for. And it speaks to the efficiency and the talent and coaching and evaluation that Iowa State has done that allows it to be successful in sports like football and men's basketball and women's basketball. And the clones have been excellent in all of those at times in recent years, including right now on the basketball court. So those days are probably numbered. And at some point we're going to be in a different kind of system, as you suggest. And I don't know what that means for Iowa State. I really don't.
You can play, as I've always said this, I mean, the same goes for mid-major basketball schools. You could pay, or you could play good basketball. You could play good football. If you have a good coach, it'll be more difficult to attract. Like, you're not going to be fishing in the waters of sitting Big Ten coaches and whatever to get a coach at the Big 12 level or at the ACC level or whatever it might be. And they're not different. I mean, they're not vastly different talent levels yet, but it'll be harder to retain those coaches if and when they have success. And you'll just have to continue to kind of do it over again. Like, some places, they just have that ingrained into their DNA. I don't know that Iowa State does. Iowa State is a tricky one because most of their all-time success has come under this coach. And so I don't know what they're going to be after that. They have a really good basketball coach. They have a really good women's basketball coach. And maybe, if TJ Atzelberger leaves, he can hand it off to one of his assistants and they can keep that thing rolling. I don't know, but your margin for error is definitely thinner. That's for sure.
Okay, let's take a break. We come back. We had a question about Iowa State. How about one about Rutgers? That is after the break. Now a word from Mazda. This is Mazda's Moving the Game Forward segment for those who show there's more to the score than what's on screen. So this is the point in the program each week where we highlight a player, a coach, or a fan, or a moment that defines what matters in sports. This week, we're talking about Rienk Mast because, you know what, he's moving the game forward. And with his work last Saturday, and even the work that he did, we based this off the work that he did Saturday, but we can talk about the work that Rienk Mast did this week during the Nebraska-Purdue game. When he fouled out, Nebraska went in the tank a bit and lost in overtime. Mast has shown unequivocally that he is back, that he's got his spark, his aggressive play, and all that he does for Nebraska on the basketball court. It shows that he has what it takes to raise the bar, and the results of his extra work done off the court are paying off. Mast dials in every detail, provides fire. He gives that I never quit kind of grit. Mazda puts that same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Wrapping up here on this Friday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone, of course, is with me as always. We go to Brett in Omaha, and he says, with Rutgers finances in the news of late, yes, Rutgers is $500 million in the hole, or maybe that's just the tab that it's racked up since the Scarlet Knights joined the Big Ten, something like that. He says, I'm secretly hoping that they shut down their football operations in order to cover their anime trading card budget, and we may never have to pay them again. Seriously, seeing Rutgers on the schedule doesn't do anything for me, and most Big Ten fans probably feel that way. Same goes for Maryland. That being said, what schools would you like to see leave the Big Ten, and what schools would you like to see them replaced with? I'd love to have Colorado and Missouri in the conference, not only for the old rivalries, but also to have more drivable road games.
Yeah, for the record, I agree. This is a great topic. Rutgers is useless to me. Maryland is useless to me. I don't think the West Coast schools should be in the Big Ten. And a lot of this has developed into my opinion of I hate the Big Ten and the Big Ten sucks. So I would love to go back to the Big 12, like Bill Moos almost faithfully did that one time, as he detailed in his 700-page book. I like that is not feasible for reasons that we just talked about as far as the money is concerned. But yes, I would love to see some old foes in the Big Ten to join. But Nebraska's never really felt like a Big Ten team to me. Still doesn't 15 years later. I guess it's growing. It's growing on me a little bit. Considering you play the same teams now for 15 years in a row, but yeah, it's just it still don't feel right. But maybe I'm just an old geezer, an old Big 12 lover.
Nah, you're too young for that. So, who would I like to see? I don't. Rutgers and Maryland are fine. I mean, it gives Nebraska fans a reason to go out to the East Coast. I mean, if you have an 18-team league or a 24-team league or whatever it might become, going back to that last question, there's going to be some teams in there that don't excite you every time you see them on the football field or on the court. But yeah, I mean, some of Nebraska's old traditional foes. Yeah. Bring in Iowa State. I'm just talking about the Cyclones. Yeah, it'd be great to see Nebraska match up against Iowa State. I'd much rather watch that. I'd have more. I just feel like there was more skin in the game for everybody involved, no matter who was playing on the court or on the football field. If you had Nebraska and Iowa State, or Nebraska and Missouri, or Nebraska and Kansas getting together and competing.
Yep. All right, let's go to Jim in the land of the Hokies. Says it is a good thing Coach Osborne is not coaching in this now is not soon enough and more is not enough age of unmet expectations. Thanks for taking my questions. Was Coach Eckler a disruptive personality in the building? He was certainly an outsized personality outside of it. Can you sense from your access as a media member confidence or lack of confidence in the program or position group, or good culture / bad culture? Do you have a complete enough picture of what goes on in the football spaces to be able to fill in the blanks? I think Nebraska has a good culture. I think Nebraska is like, they've taken on the personality of their coach a little bit. It's a little scattered, I guess, for my liking, but I think they have a good culture, and I think they do the right things on a daily basis. And I think Eckler was a fine, almost sort of like a wild card type of fit in the building. And what went wrong there was not that he wasn't a fit. It was just that he didn't sign the contract. He didn't sign the contract that was put in front of him. And then I think the relationship may have soured a bit from there.
Yeah. I mean, when we evaluate this stuff and we assess what's happening, it's not, I mean, I think Jim was trying to ask, how much do you really know? Are you guessing? And yeah, I mean, we're around people who, some of it is hearsay, but then we're also around there and around people who are in there on the inside, and we have a pretty good sense. Sometimes you don't necessarily get that information like in the moment, but we have a pretty decent sense like what's happening behind the scenes. And I do not feel like Mike Eckler was disruptive in the building at all. It was more like on the back end of this, on the after it was over. You heard some kind of explanations from Matt Rhule as to why it didn't work, and I think his fit was fine during the season. We'll just leave it at that.
All right, let's try and buzz through these last. There's still like 4 more questions, so let's see if we can get through them all. Here's Nate and Minden. Hi guys, non-football question. After watching Purdue and Nebraska, the Huskers have to figure out the paint. We need the 7-foot freshman to make a name for himself, or Bearcat to step up in the paint and get rebounds. We aren't going to get far without a big man. You can't risk the health of Rink to have him guard the rim. Yeah, I mean, you got to be who you are. Nebraska is just not. They're not a team that has traditionally stopped points in the paint by putting Rink down there and having him being a rim protector. He's not that kind of player. Nebraska guards defensively with swarming tactics, and they double on the post and they run people off the 3-point line, and that's what they're going to continue to be. And Rink, as we've talked about before, is not he's not going to dunk on you or anything like that. He is he's
below the rim,
big, but he's a below the rim type of guy, right? So yeah, keep being who they are. They're fine. They're fine doing exactly what they're doing.
Leo Curtis is the 7-foot freshman, and has been hurt of in the last game or two. He did some things in the Michigan game that made me wonder if Nebraska shouldn't insert him every once in a while, just to get a few minutes from with somebody with some size. I see you shaking your head. You don't agree, but I know that was out of desperation because of the thin nature of the team that night. But I mean, when
just don't find it necessary, like this is what it is. You're gonna have 7 guys and you're gonna roll with them. Mm-hmm. This is every team in America. Okay. Like, you got to go with your best 7. And like, if they're playing 38 minutes a game, then it's March, baby. You time to play 38 minutes a game. Like,
you can rest in April.
Yeah.
All right. From Scott in Windsor, happy college baseball opening day. Yes. Cheers. It's college baseball opening day. We have made it. We'll see you in Omaha. The Cornhuskers are set to open the 2026 season Friday at the MLB Desert Invitational in Arizona. Where is the fanfare? Nebraska is coming off back-to-back Big Ten tournament championships. Where's the excitement for this program? Nebraska was a football school, but baseball championships are pretty too cool. No. I'll tell you
where the excitement is. It's buried under 6 feet of snow down inside of the cold underbelly of the Big Ten baseball conference, which is frozen.
60 degrees on Thursday. I think it's going to be 70 one of these days coming up. Of course, when Nebraska has home games scheduled at Haymarket Park, it will be 29 degrees. As we went through a lot of weather stuff yesterday. We don't need to do that again, but we're excited. Hey, Scott, maybe you sent this question in before you heard the Thursday episode, but we talked about baseball and went through all the pitching matchups and the TV stuff. And Connor had info about Northeastern as a mid-major power, and I was impressed with our baseball knowledge collectively. So there you go.
Nice job. Here's
we'll talk more about it.
We will for sure. How close are we to having artificial intelligence officiate major sports games? 5, 10, 20 years? Which sport do you think would be the first to implement it? My guess would be baseball. I'm tired of watching officials strut around and making the game about themselves. Oh, yeah. Come on. That's fun. We love being mad at refs. It's a pastime unlike any other.
Yeah, I think true. I think that baseball, they're already doing it with the strike ball stuff. I think baseball of the major sports is far and away the easiest to be able to do with some kind of a robot officiating. There are parts of baseball that would be tough for that. Yeah. I don't know about there's a variety. There are judgment calls, but foul fair you could do with artificial intelligence. I think out safe you could. You get into things like infield fly, and football and basketball are just completely full of judgment calls that I think make it really difficult for AI. But AI can do anything. AI can do anything. I'm sure AI would be able to tell you if that was pass interference or not. So
look at me. I hate instant replay, right? Like AI. I would probably quit sports. I would go do chess or something. Like I don't know. I would be so mad.
Next thing you know, they're going to be playing the game. The AI. Why not?
Yeah,
have an AI pitcher. He throws 144 miles an hour.
It'd be so stupid.
Right. Okay, we have reached the end, and we finish with our friend Vince in Napa. All right, Vince. He says, "Happy Friday, fellas, and thank you for allowing me to weigh in on the podcast. I'm going away from the question path. No, you would never do that. And would like to share a story. As a lifelong San Francisco 49er fan and mostly a lifelong Husker fan, I'm basking in the glow of Roger Craig's induction into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm so happy that I could high step from my house to the car. Craig, nice. Coupled with the 49ers, he does that every day anyway, coupled with the 49ers drafting of fellow Husker Tom Rathman, spearheaded my Nebraska fandom. The year was 1987. I was a high school freshman playing JV football. My father was his 49ers season ticket holder. I attended numerous games from 84 to 97 with my dad, who went to heaven in 2023. RIP to Vince's dad, Joe. I had a great NFL team to follow in the midst of a dynasty, witnessing 5 Super Bowl titles. Just needed a good college team to give me an affinity. Coach Bill Walsh decided to pair Rathman and Craig as the 49ers starting backfield in 87. The 15-year-old me, 15-year-old me equal 49ers. I don't know what you're talking about, Vince. Oh, cool. They win a lot. I'll start rooting for them. Little did I know, I would later get my journalism degree from the University of Nebraska during the pinnacle of Husker football, witnessing 3 national championships in 4 years. I cherish those years to this day. Moved back to Napa in 98. Napa is my hometown. Lincoln is my college town. You can thank Roger Craig for kickstarting that interest that I retain today.
I've heard it. I mean, not obviously that similar of a story, but like, I've heard from a lot of, 80s Nebraska fans, football fans, and, tell me about Roger Craig over all the years. And I've certainly seen, and know about his career, but I didn't watch it live. And I've heard a story very similar to it. Like those were the teams that made me love football and made me follow football and did it in a different way. So that's really cool that Vince has such a connection, obviously, being in Napa in the San Francisco area and then going to Nebraska. I mean, that's really cool.
Roger, the video of Roger, and these are always amazing videos when the NFL Hall of Fame inductees get the word from somebody that they're getting in, and it was Ronnie Lott who knocked on his door, and Craig opened the door before Ronnie Lott even knocked. Like, they were standing outside the door with the cameras, and he couldn't even wait for Ronnie Lott to open the door, and they were hugging, and it was really, really. If you haven't seen that, go find that on the internet, and you'd be happy for Roger Craig if you've never seen him, never met him, never heard of him before that moment.
Yeah, he was emotional on stage when he got announced with all the other Hall of Famers. Right. All right, that will do it for us today. Really appreciate you guys being with us this week. Come back next week for a fresh batch of episodes. And thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On College Football. We'll talk to you guys on Monday.